Hi, this is Nick Shepherd. You can see I wrote the book, The Tunnels of Wallingford, Fact or Fiction. Now, I should add that I am not a professional, I'm an amateur. I grew up in Wallingford, and there were lots and lots of stories about hidden tunnels underneath the town. I actually grew up in what is now the Wallingford Museum, a house called Flint House. My grandparents owned Flint House when I was born. And for my first 5 years in life, I lived there, as did some of my cousins. And one of the stories one of my cousins told was being taken down by my grandmother, actually, to the cellar of Flint House and shown where the tunnels were that went from the cellar to other locations in Wallingford. And in fact, my grandmother told her, not only told her about the cellars, but took her down the cellars with her sisters. She took them down one at a time and said to the other sisters to wait and if there was any problem to sort of get somebody in, come and check for them. And they were gone for some time. They took torches with them, or flashlights as we know them here, and they explored the tunnels. So my cousin was absolutely definitive that they were there. And then over the years, there've been other stories in Facebook about people who have heard about tunnels or have bricked up doors in their cellars, or different histories that they've heard from their parents or grandparents or other people. Now, we know that the town goes back a long way. In fact, in 1955, you can see over here, it celebrated its 800 years of royal charter being granted. So way before 1155, and we know the castle in Wallingford is from the mid 11th century. So we know there were settlements in Wallingford for even hundreds of years prior to that. And if anybody wants to know the history of Wallingford, no better person than Judy Dewey at the Wallingford Museum to tell you about it. As I say, I'm not an expert. And so this is more a way of pulling together a lot of these histories and ideas about what the possibility of tunnels is under Wallingford. I had, in fact, asked on Facebook whether people had stories. The Bygone Wallingford Facebook page, I asked the question: did people have stories about tunnels under Wallingford? And I had over 100 responses. There are many, many stories, and that's what I've tried to do and capture in this book. Is it possible that there could have been tunnels under Wallingford? If so, how far back do they date? Certainly, the archaeologists and the people who are far more educated than I in this area will tell you that there is no possibility of tunnels under Wallingford. There may be a few, cold cellars and things like that, but none of the tunnels. And yet the stories persist. So in the book, I lay out what the stories are. They talk about where the different stories seem to be centered around. For example, there's a lot of stories centered around High Street. That seems to be a major area. More stories centered around the crossroads in the center of the town between High Street and Castle Street. So a lot of these stories could be true. Who knows? And that's really what I wrote the book for, is to record the stories and pose the question. You make your own mind up whether they're true or not. But I didn't want the stories to disappear as we're all getting older in my generation. Sure, people are telling stories about these tunnels under Wallingford, but is it possible? As you can see, parts of Wallingford are still there to be seen. The old castle gates behind me that lead off High Street into what was the south entrance of Wallingford Castle. All sorts of potential for hidden tunnels and hidden cellars and basements and connections. There were 13 or 14 churches in Wallingford at one time. And in the days when there was a lot of conflict between the church and the crown, it's quite possible that there were tunnels that connected some of these churches. So the book is for you, the reader. You have a look at it, have a read through it with an open mind, and make up your own mind. Is it possible that there were tunnels underneath Wallingford? Or is it just stories of fantasy? I prefer to keep an open mind. People have seen it, and those people, although they're no longer with us in a lot of cases, they say they saw it with their own eyes. So who are we to believe or not? As a footnote, the final thing is that unfortunately my dad, shortly before he died, my grandparents had died, and he was using Flint House as a business location, and he did some renovations to Flint House, and he had all of the rubble from the renovations put down into the cellar. And so no longer can one access the cellar from what was the scullery. In fact, a lot of that end of the house has now been knocked down when the library in Wallingford was put in, was built in the grounds of what was Flint House. So certainly some of the areas of even accessing the tunnels not there anymore. But the stories are what's important. I hope you read the book. I hope you enjoy the book, and certainly try and keep the stories alive, because these are the things of fiction. Hope you enjoy the book. Thanks.